Hey up. Forget the millennial trash this episode, we're looking at a cult 80s film instead, which will be nice for a change. Turkey Shoot, also known as Blood Camp Thatcher and Escape 2000, this is a 1982 Australian action film, directed by Brian Trenchard-Smith, who it looks like did a bunch of this sort of stuff around the 80s, and is known as founding the Ozploitation movement. The film has a few names in it. We've got Steve Railsback, who was in Life Force and Nuke, and we also have Olivia Hussey, who was in the 74 version of Black Christmas and the It TV miniseries. So nice to actually have a few actors in this to talk about. Makes a change, doesn't it? Notoriously violent, known as a cult classic and even being lauded by people like Quentin Tarantino, I've heard a lot about this film and it's been one that I've been wanting to check out for quite a long time. So let's see if it lives up to the hype, shall we?
You got it, Mr. Thatcher. Help, Mr. Thatcher! You got me!
Sir, I'm a deviant, lost form of life on Earth. I will learn to be an asset to society. Sir...
Except some asshole turned me in for being a whore, which I am not.
The plot follows three people deemed unfit for society in a dystopian future, so they're sent off to a concentration camp that's headed by the evil Brit Thatcher. But pretty soon they're put into a game for their lives that may end up in their freedom. Basically, if they survive until sundown without getting hunted, then they're free to go. So, time to start running, and there's a lot of running in this. You know what? This isn't too bad, really. The plot is pretty decent. It's simple, but it's decent. It's a little 1984, a little Running Man. It does get a little dull sometimes, especially when they're just running through the outback for ages, and gunfights rarely keep my attention. But it's not completely void of charm, and there's definitely stuff to enjoy in this.
You want me to bury her, Mr. Ritter?
She ain't dead yet, Dodge.
I could do it anyway. Open season!
The acting is B-movie standard, you know, it's not great, but it's not terrible either, it's just somewhere in the middle, although the accents are a little all over the shop, shifting from Aussie to Cockney to American, pretty much constantly flitting about. The leads are fine for the most part. There's a weirdly shoehorned in romance that doesn't go anywhere, and there's the odd cheesy line here and there that's not great. But for the most part they're fine. I think Rita's probably the worst character though, because for some reason she thinks it's a great idea to start frolicking in a river while she's being hunted down. I don't know, really stupid bit that. Now the gore. Now, I was promised a lot of gore. It's all over the case and it's just in the advertising. This film is meant to be real gory. And unfortunately I was a little bit disappointed on this front. There's a few standout moments, you know, there's a dude getting ripped in half, there's a guy getting his hands cut off, but then the rest of the gore is very basic, you know, people having been shot with a bit of blood on them on the floor and stuff like that. Nothing really, outside of the few odd standout moments, there wasn't really as much as I was expecting, I guess. There is gore here, but it's, and it takes a really long time to really get going as well. You're waiting a good hour and 5 minutes before the gore really rears its head. I don't know, a bit disappointing to be honest. A really strange inclusion is a werewolf man, or whatever he is. He's barely explained, something about he came from a circus, and there he is in the film. I like him. I'm glad he's here, to be honest. He ups the campy element of the film, and watching him run around attacking people is really fun. Yeah, good inclusion, I guess, but completely unexpected. It's made well, this film, though. It's competently put together, you know. It has a story, and the camera's in the right place, and it looks like a film should look. Which is saying something from some of the shit we've been watching recently, to be honest. You know, it's competent. It doesn't look like it was made for £100 in an afternoon. The version that I watched claims to be the fully uncut version, and I have no reason to doubt this, to be honest. Apparently the original release was about 83 minutes in the UK, and the one that I watched is just shy of 90 minutes. No obvious cuts or anything seems right. I had to look at what turkey shoot meant though, because I had no idea what it was actually referring to. Turns out it's a colloquialism for a one-sided, unfair battle, which makes sense in the context of the film. It's kind of what it's about. Obviously this film was renamed in the UK to Blood Camp Thatcher, which was done to capitalise on the then hatred of the current Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. And I guess it worked because people watched it on VHS. Now personally I prefer Turkey Shoot as a name, because it makes more sense. Blood Camp Thatcher is just a bit of a word salad really, isn't it? Apparently this film had a lot of production issues as well. Apparently the shoot time was cut completely in half, which meant they had to resort to using some stock footage, which you can see at the beginning of the film, and they also just had to get rid of scenes entirely. Now it's not completely obvious watching the film that this was the case, but it's a shame hearing that it couldn't be fully realised. Apparently some of the actors had a bit of a bad time as well. Olivia Hussey and Lydia Stoner were both pressured into doing nude scenes, but neither of them wanted to. I think Lydia Stoner actually ended up caving to the pressure and doing it. Olivia Hussey, yeah, that's the name. I need to keep checking these names. Olivia Hussey apparently really didn't like where they were shooting as well, the Australian outback. Apparently the insects and animals really freaked her out, so she was pretty much just terrified throughout the entire shoot as well. And you know what? I don't blame her. I think I'd be awful with giant Australian insects around me at any given point. Lastly, this film was remade in 2014, directed by a guy called John Hewitt, and it did abysmally, terribly. Reviews are awful across the board, and it ended up being renamed to Elimination Game when it was re-released outside of Australia.
You come with me.
Come on, you piece of shit.
I'm gonna fuck your ass, boy.
Huh?
You're gone, boy. All right, come on, Mike. That's a good kick. Another shit!
Okay, time for the print. Visually, this is pretty good, you know. It's sharp and it's quite clear. It does get a little pixelated when there's a lot going on screen, but for the most part it's very watchable and way better than what we've been seeing recently. Unfortunately though, the audio quality is pretty bad on this. It clips and it's distorted on most of the dialogue, and it just sounds a bit tinny throughout the entire thing. So decent visually, but not so great in the sound department, unfortunately. And on the disc, we get a little more than what we usually get. Obviously we get the usuals, we get the chapter select, the trailer for this film and the Hard Gore trailers, but we also get an image gallery which includes a few of the original VHS and DVD covers from Vipco for the film, which is nice. And we get something called production notes, which is, I don't really know why it's called production notes, because it's just a little write-up about who acted in this and who they have then gone on to work with, who's famous and what famous things they've been in. I don't know, weird. But, you know, it's nice that there's a bit more on this disc than normal. It's just a shame that the extra bits that we do get on the disc are pretty boring. Okay, let's look at this case then. The cover is mad. There's so much going on here, but I kind of like it, to be honest. The blurb reads well, no issues there. Although this quote at the top, most head explosions since Scanners. Now this film has one head explosion in it, and it isn't even close to how impressive Scanners' famous scene is. Did we even watch the same film, James O'Neill? The runtime is a few minutes off, but it's forgivable. Way better than last episode for sure. And yeah, not really much more to say on this case. It's decent. Overall then, this is definitely the first good film we've had in a while. The plot's pretty interesting and decent. Some of the gore is good, it's a little sporadic, but what we have is fine, it's pretty good. And there's weird inclusions like a wolfman to keep you interested. Now, I don't know if I'm just saying this because it's like the first thing that I've watched recently that is halfway competent, but I had fun with this. I enjoyed my time watching this, and I definitely say check it out. Especially if you're into your low budget, cult film, 80s action things. This might just tick a few boxes for you. It's not too bad. By way of release, you've got a couple options, which is, again, nice for a change. There are a few options for this. Obviously there's this, and then the Shriek Collection, which is probably exactly the same print. And then we also have a Severin Blu-ray, and more recently there's an Umbrella Blu-ray. Now, unfortunately, these two are both imports, so there isn't an actual UK Blu-ray as far as I can see. But Severin and Umbrella are pretty good companies, and if you don't mind paying a little extra for the import costs, it's probably worth grabbing one of those over this, because even though the picture's fine, the sound isn't great. This is probably worth it if you see it very cheap. But if you actually want to watch this film properly, probably go for one of the import Blu-rays. So there's options at the very least. So yeah, a semi-decent cult action film this episode. Not too bad at all. It's nice to be positive for once. And let's hope we can keep this up, because we're moving back into the world of Italian exploitation next episode. Well, another one that I've been really dying to check out. We're going to be watching Last Cannibal World.